So because we pretty much exclusively focus on clients who are above age 50 and either relatively close to retirement or already in retirement, we become fairly effective over time at fine-tuning and focusing our retirement planning process on the areas that will benefit those clients the most. So our retirement planning process starts with step 1, which is life planning. The purpose of life planning is, before leaving the full-time workforce, to consider what you'll ultimately do to maintain a sense of purpose, to stay socially connected, ultimately to get the most of your time. Now, while life planning certainly has softer benefits, there are financial implications too, because ultimately what you spend your time doing during retirement will have implications for your expenses. And expense planning is step 2 of our process. So during step 2, expense planning, we'll begin to estimate how much you'll need to spend each year in retirement. And there's a lot that goes into doing this the right way. Inflation must be considered, taxes must be considered, healthcare costs certainly must be factored in. So with expense planning, we'll generally start with current expenses as a baseline. We'll subtract some things that may go away between now and retirement, such as paying off a mortgage. We'll add things that may come into the picture during retirement, such as increased healthcare costs, and then we'll inflate that over time. That's step 2, expense planning. Now, step 3, income planning. So income planning encompasses a lot. One is analyzing Social Security benefits to make sure you file for benefits in a way that makes sense for your unique situation. Second is analyzing pension benefits you have available, making sure you claim a pension option that makes sense for your unique situation. And third, and maybe most importantly about income planning, is building what we call the retirement cash flow statement. So the retirement cash flow statement is an important tool to answer many of the most relevant retirement planning questions, such as, well, first off, when can I retire? Or how much money do I need to have saved up to retire? Or how much income will I have to pull out of my investment accounts each year during retirement to fill the gap between my expenses and income from fixed sources such as Social Security and pensions if I have a pension? Or what if I retire a year sooner? Or what if I spend a little more in retirement? Or stress testing undesirable scenarios, such as what if inflation is higher than expected? Or what if taxes go up? Or what if one spouse needs to go to a long-term care facility for an extended stay for several years? Or what if one spouse unfortunately dies unexpectedly young? The cash flow statement is a useful tool to analyze the long-term implications of short-term decisions you may be considering. Now, step 4, investment planning. The purpose of investment planning, once we've completed step 3, once we have the cash flow statement built, is to create a well-organized investment plan with the focus of generating income that will last for life and that will increase over time to account for inflation. So investment planning here is very much informed by your unique cash flow needs. It's not based solely on your age. It's not based how you complete one of those 0 to 10 questionnaires where your answer today may have been very different than your answer tomorrow, depending on mood and other factors at the time. The appropriate way to do investment planning when the focus is retirement planning is to base the investment plan on your unique cash flow needs, and that's exactly what we'll do here. So that's step 4, investment planning. Now, step 5 is tax planning. There's a lot that goes into tax planning. Maybe 2 of the most important items. One is planning for the risk of taxes increasing in the future. So how we'll address that is building Roth assets. So we'll evaluate when the appropriate time and what the appropriate method is to build Roth assets into each plan. Another important tax item is required minimum distributions. So many will assume that in retirement, because you're no longer working, your tax rate will go down. And in many cases, that is the way it works. In some instances though, especially for good savers, once required minimum distributions kick in, it's quite possible that your tax rate in retirement can actually be higher than what it was when you were working. In addition to that, required minimum distributions in certain cases can trigger Medicare penalties. So we assess proactively what is the risk of required minimum distributions triggering tax increases and Medicare penalties in the future. And then if that's a real risk in your case, we'll plan proactively and take steps now to minimize that long-term risk down the road. So there's a lot of other things there too. That's step 5, tax planning. Step 6 is healthcare planning. So with healthcare planning, well, first off, what we do there will depend on your age. So if you're retiring before age 65, first off, we'll assess if you're still married, consider getting on the spouse's plan if that's an option. Oftentimes when that is an option, that'll be the best way to go. If that's not an option, assessing COBRA through a prior employer, any other benefits you have available through prior employers or other groups you're a part of, or assessing marketplace plans. If you're 65 and above, it's enrolling in Medicare, evaluating supplement versus Medicare Advantage plans, and then evaluating long-term care expenses and steps you can take to protect assets from the risk of being depleted by future long-term care costs. So that's healthcare planning. Now the final step, step 7, is estate planning. So ultimately the purpose of estate planning is to pass assets where you want them to go, when you want them to go there, in a way that's as smooth and efficient as possible, and in a way that minimizes taxes. So when appropriate, in coordination with an estate planning attorney, we'll assess wills and trusts, we'll assess the probate process and steps you may be able to take to avoid probate when appropriate, and in cases where it's important to you, we'll evaluate building gifting into the plan in a way that's tax efficient and also financially responsible for your own long-term financial security. So that's step 7, estate planning. So there's a lot there with our retirement planning process, but because we focus pretty much exclusively on working with those who are above age 50 and either relatively close to retirement or already in retirement, we become fairly effective over time at organizing all this into a relatively straightforward plan. So if you're interested in discussing your retirement planning individually, complete the form at the top of the page and I'll be in touch.